I was always the quiet one. Not the kind of quiet that meant sweet or gentle. The kind that made relatives whisper during family gatherings. There's something off about that girl. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone, and everyone talked. My father Joe was a foreman at one of the largest agribusiness estates in the state, practically royalty around here. My mother, a devout Catholic who spent more time polishing her rosary beads than asking if I was okay. I was 17 when the rejection started to calcify into something permanent. My older brother, Lucas, was the golden child, clean-cut football star, engineering student. Me. I liked books that made people uncomfortable, music that made old people frown, and boys that made my father furious, but none of that prepared them, or me, for what came next. It started with a secret, a man, a baby. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. It was a hot February afternoon when I met him, Rafael Montenegro. I was running errands for my mother. Grumbling under my breath, my flip-flops slapping angrily against the pavement. My dad had just been promoted again, now overseeing the entire east sector of the Montenegro plantations. And my mom was acting like she'd married into nobility. I was sent to deliver a cake to Raphael's estate. A thank you for the promotion gesture from my mother. He opened the door himself. He wasn't what I expected. No suit, no cigar, no cold eyes. Instead, he wore a thin white linen shirt, barefoot, sun-kissed skin, dark hair messy and damp, probably fresh from the pool. He smiled like the devil who just found his next sin. Joho's daughter, he said, his eyes scanning me like he already knew all my secrets. Didn't expect beauty to run in the family. I was 17. He was 30-2. Dangerous, unattainable, until he wasn single quotes. We began in shadows first. A conversation that went on too long, then a hand brushing mine as he gave me a drink, then ... Everything else, I wasn't stupid. I knew what I was doing. Or, at least, I thought I did. He didn't promise me love. He didn't need to. The thrill was enough. The rebellion, the secrecy. The raw, charged tension that made me feel alive for the first time in years, but secrets rot. Especially the kind you can't hide forever. It was a Tuesday morning when I threw up during breakfast. My mother wrinkled her nose and waved it off as a stomach bug. But I knew. I bought a test at the pharmacy in the next town over, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses like a failed celebrity. It came back positive. I told no one, except him. Raphael's reaction wasn't what I expected. No panic, no guilt. He poured 2 glasses of wine. I didn't drink mine and sat back in his leather chair, staring at me like he was calculating something. "You'll keep it," he said. Not asked. Said. I nodded. He smirked. Good. That was it. But life isn't a movie. We didn't run away together. He didn't leave his penthouse for a trailer. He didn't shower me with love or promises. He just kept me. He put me in an apartment he owned on the edge of town. Told me to stop going home. Said it was safer that way. At first, I didn't care. I was drunk on rebellion, high on my own recklessness. But as the weeks passed, my belly grew, and my isolation deepened. And then the whispers started. In a town like mine, pregnancy doesn't stay a secret, especially when the father is nowhere in sight. My mother showed up at my apartment once, slammed her palm against the door like she was trying to break it down. When I finally opened it, she slapped me so hard I saw stars. "You filthy little whore," she spat. "You've shamed this family." My father refused to look at me. Lucas blocked me on everything. They didn't ask who the father was. They didn't want to know. Because knowing would have meant admitting that their world, their precious hierarchy of morals, respect, and status, was about to implode. But the real explosion came at the baby shower. Yes, I threw one. Alone, no, family. Just 2 of my old classmates. The ones who hadn't vanished the second my belly started to show. I did it for me to pretend, just for one afternoon, that I wasn't the town's disgrace. Then Raphael showed up, uninvited, wearing a suit like sin itself. Dark, tailored, intimidating. He brought flowers and a gift, a diamond bracelet that cost more than my father's truck. He kissed me on the cheek and whispered, "They'll know soon." He wasn't wrong, because that same week, my father was invited to Raphael's estate for a private discussion. He came home white as a sheet. And, just like that, the silence stopped. My mother started calling again. Lucas sent me a message, "We should talk." They still didn't say sorry. But their tone changed. My father's voice shook when he asked if I was eating enough. My mother started asking about prenatal vitamins like she suddenly cared. Because now I wasn't just a shameful mistake. I was carrying the future heir of the Montenegro Empire. After my father's meeting with Raphael, everything changed, but not in a way that made sense. My family's sudden turnabout wasn't love, it was survival. Because I wasn't just their daughter anymore, I was a womb with value. My father didn't ask how I was doing. He asked what the baby's gender was. My mother started showing up with food I hadn't liked since I was 12, talking nonsense about making sure the child grows strong. Strong, not loved. Lucas came by, said all the right words with none of the right emotions. He watched my belly like it was a ticking bomb, then glanced at my apartment walls with the cold assessment of someone considering real estate. What does he plan to do? He asked. He meant Raphael. I said, raise his child. With me. Lucas laughed. You think he's going to marry you? That hit harder than it should. V because no, Raphael hadn't proposed. Hadn't even hinted at it. And yet, his presence loomed over everything now. He was the king. And I, apparently, had become his chosen queen. 3 weeks after the shower, Raphael sent a car. Not a driver, a car. Silver, sleek, impossible. The kind of vehicle that didn't belong in a town with more tractors than Teslas. A folded card waited in the seat. Pack your things, you're moving. I didn't hesitate. There was no goodbye. No final look at my cramped apartment. Just the thrill and terror of the unknown. The new place was not an apartment. It was a villa. High gates. Marble floors. Staff who bowed. A private room decorated in pale blues and gold. Raphael's guess at a boy. A nurse on call, a nutritionist. A stylist. It wasn't kindness. It was control. Your family now, he said with that wolf's grin. And my family is treated like royalty. But royalty, I learned, is just a prettier kind of prison. We didn't sleep in the same room. He came by. Sometimes, late at night, when the staff were gone and the air was thick with summer heat, we didn't talk much. He'd touch my belly, sometimes kiss me like he was laying claim, then leave. I never saw him sleep. It was in those moments I realized, Raphael Montenegro didn't do intimacy, he did power, and I was now a part of his empire. Then came the gala. The Montenegro Foundation was hosting its annual charity event. Politicians, businessmen, celebrities. Raphael insisted I attend. I want them to see you, he said, adjusting the sapphire necklace he'd gifted me for the occasion. You're carrying my son. They'll treat you accordingly. It was the first time I'd worn a gown that cost more than my mother's wedding. Silk, slit high, low back, bump proudly visible. I felt like a weapon. Until I walked into that ballroom. Eyes everywhere. Some were impressed, some horrified, some pretending to smile while stabbing me with judgment. The whispers were sharp enough to shred skin. Is that her? She's so young. Isn't that Joe's daughter? Smart man, Raphael. She breed well. Breed like I was a mare. But the worst was yet to come. My family was there. My father, for the first time, looked small. Like a man who knew his survival depended on staying useful to the king. My mother clung to her wine glass, face frozen in a smile so tight it hurt to watch. Lucas hovered near the politicians, pretending he belonged. Raphael wrapped his arm around my waist and introduced me to everyone as the mother of my heir. Not my name, not my partner, not even my fiancé, just a title, a function, and I smiled, because I knew the game now, and I wasn't going to lose. Later that night, back at the villa, I stood on the balcony watching the city lights burn. Raphael came up behind me, slid his arms around my swollen waist. You were perfect tonight, he said. Of course I was, I whispered. I'm everything they want, young, fertile, obedient. He laughed. You're not obedient. Not yet, I said. But they don't need to know that. He turned me toward him, eyes dark with something I couldn't name. You're learning, he murmured. No, I thought. I'm calculating. Because for the first time, I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't ashamed. They thought I was trapped. But what they didn't see, what Raphael didn't see, was that I wasn't the one in the cage. I was the one holding the key. By the 8th month of my pregnancy, the swelling wasn't just in my body, it was in my power. Everyone thought I was just the girl who got lucky or unlucky, depending on the gossip, the naive daughter of a working man who caught the attention of a rich, dangerous beast, but I knew better. Raphael Montenegro didn't accidentally do anything. Not desire. Not dominance. Not me. And I was finally ready to play the game on his level. It started with documents, a drawer he forgot to lock, a folder left open, names, properties, offshore accounts. There was a file with my name already printed on it, Carolina Montenegro. That wasn't my name. Not yet, I wasn't even asked. Raphael was planning everything, schooling for the child, trust funds, security details. He'd carved out a place for me in his empire. But he hadn't invited me in, he'd installed me. That's when it clicked. I wasn't the queen. I was the incubator. Royal, yes, but disposable. If I ever became inconvenient, there'd be a price, a payout, a replacement. Another girl, another heir, unless I changed the rules. The baby was born in late September. A boy. He came out screaming, fists balled like he already knew the war he'd been born into. Raphael didn't cry. Didn't even smile. He just stood there, staring at his son like he was evaluating a stock option. I named him Cayo, even though Raphael had other plans. A long Spanish name tied to legacy and wealth. I chose a short, simple one that meant rejoice. It was the first thing I took back for myself. The hospital stay was brief. A private suite, of course. A press release was carefully crafted and circulated. Industrial magnate welcomes son with longtime partner. Photos staged, faces blurred, comments disabled. My family was ushered in for 10 carefully timed minutes. My mother tried to hold Cayo and cried when I refused. My father tried to joke. Didn't think I'd be a grandfather this way. Lucas stayed silent, watching Raphael, the entire time, as if he were trying to decode the man who'd appended our bloodline. None of them congratulated me, just Raphael, because I wasn't the achievement, Cayo was. Back at the estate, I was expected to rest, which meant, be quiet, be pretty, and be grateful. But while Raphael worked long hours and slept in his study, I started asking questions, to the maids, to the drivers, to the nanny. They talked not because they trusted me, but because they thought I was harmless. A girl with a baby and no idea how to use a gun, much less information. But I listened, took notes, made copies. I learned about the land deals Raphael made with shell companies that funneled cash back into his private accounts. I learned which politicians owed him favors, and which ones feared him. I learned about a scandal in Spain he buried, with hush money, and about a daughter he might have fathered in Chile, whom he never acknowledged. I learned everything, and I kept smiling. The shift came slowly. I started dressing differently. Sharp, tailored, powerful. I took meetings with Raphael's legal team, always as the mother, never as a threat. I was present at every negotiation involving our son's future. Then I made my first real move. I told Raphael I wanted full guardianship in writing for tax reasons. I said. He raised an eyebrow. You don't trust me. I smiled. Of course I do. But we live in a cruel world, don't we? He signed. Because powerful men don't think they can be outplayed, especially by a woman. They once undressed like prey. The next bomb I dropped wasn't legal, it was emotional. I invited my father to the estate for dinner, just him. The tension was nuclear. He arrived in his Sunday clothes, sweating before he even stepped inside. I want to know the truth. I told him over dessert. He blinked. What truth? Why did Raphael choose me? My father froze, because he knew. He'd known all along. And, when I pushed gently, then harder it came out. Years ago, Raphael had covered for my father after a worker's death on site. There had been an inquiry. A possible negligence charge. Raphael erased it, in return. My father owed him loyalty, silence, access, including to me. Raphael didn't just see me that day. I brought the cake. He'd requested it. I wasn't fate, I was payment. That night, I watched Raphael sleep for the first time. He looked peaceful, untouchable, but he wasn't, because I had the files. I had the guardianship. I had the secrets, and I had something else now. The fire of betrayal burning so hot in my veins. It melted away the last pieces of the scared, shamed girl I used to be. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I wasn't even just a lover or a liability. I was a woman reborn in fire. And if Raphael thought he was the only one who could play God in this family, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. Revenge doesn't come with trumpets, it comes slowly, like poison in a chalice. And Raphael, he had been drinking from mine for months, toasting to his empire, while I stirred the toxins behind every smile. After the dinner with my father, something in me calcified. The truth that Raphael had orchestrated my entrance into his world, that my own father had offered me like a lamb for slaughter, burned a scar so deep it split me in two. I still kissed Raphael goodnight. I still let him trace my collarbone with lazy fingers. But now I kept a knife behind my back, metaphorically. For now. CAIO grew fast like a spark becoming wildfire, sharp eyes, silent curiosity, a born observer, just like me. Raphael insisted he be raised bilingual, tutors, nannies, guards, cameras, control, wrapped in luxury. But I was learning how to use that control against him. I started attending Raphael's board meetings as the mother of his heir. Never interrupting, just observing, taking notes no one thought I'd understand. I made friends with the wives of his enemies, the kind who smiled at each other with teeth, not warmth. I began to host small gatherings at the estate. Not for fun, for pal mapping. Who was loyal? To whom? Who flinched when I mentioned certain names? Who owed money? Who had lovers? I used what Raphael taught me. I became him, but softer, deadlier. Then came the night, everything cracked. It was 2 a.m. when I found Raphael in the wine cellar, shirt unbuttoned, glass in hand, pacing like a wolf who'd lost his scent. You've been quiet lately, he said. Maybe I'm just happy. He turned to me. No, you're plotting. We stared at each other in silence. You knew what I was when we started, he finally said. No, I replied. I knew what you were. I didn't know what I was. And what are you now? I stepped toward him, leaned close, and whispered, dangerous. The next day, I made my move. I met with Raphael's personal lawyer, the same one who'd drawn up the guardianship documents, the same man who thought I was harmless. I told him I wanted a will mine. I told him I wanted to assign 100% of my assets and guardianship to my family in the event of my death. Not Raphael, not his estate, just me. The lawyer flinched. Raphael wouldn't. I didn't say he would. I said if. He nodded, and I smiled, because now I had a document stating Raphael would lose everything if I died under suspicious circumstances, which meant I'd made myself too valuable to kill or disappear. Meanwhile, Lucas, my perfect brother, started slithering back into the picture. He came to visit CAIO. Started bringing gifts, started asking questions like, do you ever worry Raphael will take the baby and run? I watched him like I watched everyone now, because Lucas didn't come with guilt. He came with a plan. He wanted in. He wanted Raphael's trust, his wealth, his seat at the table, and he'd use me, or Keo, to get it. He tried to flirt with the nanny, tried to make jokes with Raphael's associates, tried to mirror Raphael's charm, but he wasn't built for this world. I was, so I gave him just enough attention to make him think he was useful, because pawns are more valuable when they think they're knights. 1 month later, I leaked the first scandal. An anonymous tip to a rival news outlet about a Montenegro-owned company that had been acquiring farmland illegally, pushing indigenous families off the land under false claims of development. I made sure it couldn't be traced to me. Raphael exploded. He fired half his staff, screamed at lawyers, threatened people, but the damage was done. His name was in the mud, investors pulled out, and I stood beside him, holding Kyo, pretending to be his anchor, while letting him sink. But even poisoned kings learn. One night, as I read in bed, Raphael sat down beside me, unusually still. I know it was you, he said. I didn't flinch. Know what? He leaned close. You're playing a game you think you can win. Maybe I already have. He smiled. Not kind, not cruel, just curious. You think motherhood protects you. You think your clever little strategies will keep you safe. He reached out, brushing Kyo's photo on the nightstand. But love is a weakness, and you're drowning in it. I closed the book. You mistake love for vulnerability. I don't. Then why haven't you left? I met his gaze. Because I haven't finished what I started. A week later, I received a package, no sender. Inside, a flash drive, and on it, security footage of Raphael meeting with my father. Not from months ago, from last week. Cash exchanged. Documents passed, and, in the background, Lucas. Watching. Smiling. My blood ran cold, because now, I wasn't just fighting Raphael, I was fighting my family. They wanted what I had, but they'd forgotten something vital. I had already survived the worst rejection, humiliation, isolation. Now I had everything to lose and everything to weaponize. They thought I was a girl playing queen. But I was a queen who remembered exactly what it felt like to be powerless, and I would never go back. Not without burning them all down first. Every empire ends. Some with war, some with rot, some with a whisper. And a woman who finally decides she's done being used. I watched the footage 100 times, my father exchanging files with Raphael. Lucas, lurking like a snake in the walls of my life. Money, betrayal, smiles. And I understood. They weren't trying to destroy me, they were trying to replace me. Raphael knew he couldn't control me much longer. He'd tried everything. Seduction, intimidation, wealth, silence, none of it worked, so he turned to what men like him always do, a familiar woman. A weaker one. Someone easier to mold. Someone who wouldn't ask questions about his offshore accounts or file custody protections in secret. He was preparing for my removal, my family. They were just bargaining chips in his next transaction. Lucas wanted a stake in Raphael's power. My father wanted forgiveness, relevance, and a paycheck. None of them cared if I disappeared, as long as the baby stayed in the castle. But I wasn't going anywhere, and I sure as hell wasn't leaving Caio behind. The final act had to be perfect. One mistake, and I'd lose everything, so I called a friend. Well, a friend in the way that mattered in this world. A journalist I'd fed whispers to 4 months. Training him like a hunting dog. I have something for you, I said. A war chest, names, documents, dates, but you publish only after I say go. He agreed. Everyone has their price. And I'd just doubled his. I started feeding Raphael lies that I was tired, that I missed home, that I wanted to go away for a few weeks to reconnect with my roots, before returning to the estate to him. He believed it, or he pretended to. He even offered his private jet, perfect because that jet had a flight manifest, and I had already hacked it, while Raphael packed my bags with care, and gave Caio a kiss on the forehead. I sent the trigger word to the journalist. Now, the explosion wasn't literal, but the fallout was nuclear. The expose dropped at 8 a.m. sharp. It named Raphael Montenegro as the architect behind years of illegal land seizures, corporate bribes, political blackmail, and manipulation of public contracts tied to the mayor's office. Worse, it showed bank transfers linking him to L.O., Lucas, and my father. One headline read, Empire of Shadows, the Montenegro Conspiracy. Another, whistleblower was his mistress and the mother of his child. By noon, Raphael's phone was melting. By 2 p.m., arrest warrants were being discussed. By 3 p.m., Raphael vanished. They searched his properties. They froze his accounts. They couldn't find him, but I knew where he'd go. Because men like Raphael never run, they retreat. He had a hidden villa in Portugal. One he never used under his name, but under the name of his late uncle. So I did the unthinkable. I followed him. I arrived at the villa 2 days later. Unannounced, he answered the door with a gun in one hand and a glass of wine in the other. You've ruined me, he said. I walked in anyway. I freed you, I replied. He looked older, tired, like the mask had finally cracked and the real man underneath was gasping for breath. Why? He asked. You had everything. No, I said. You had everything. I just lived in your shadow. You loved me once. I thought I did, but love doesn't erase the truth. He poured a second glass. Now what? You kill me. I smiled. No, I let you live. That's worse. Back in Brazil, my father was arrested for corruption. Lucas fled, but not fast enough. He was caught trying to withdraw $500,000 in cash from an account tied to a Montenegro shell company. My mother denied everything. She always did. I didn't visit her, didn't need to. She'd already sentenced herself to a lifetime of guilt. I returned to the estate now mine. Raphael signed over everything in exchange for my silence about his daughter in Chile. The one thing still buried. It was poetic. Really, he built an empire with secrets. I dismantled it with truth. He created a kingdom of ghosts. I left him to haunt it. Caio is older now. He asks questions about his father, about his grandfather, about why our name is famous and feared. I tell him stories, some gentle, some cruel. I tell him the truth. Eventually, because I won't raise another man who hides behind power. I'll raise one who understands it and knows what it costs. Sometimes people say I was lucky, that I escaped. They don't. No, I didn't escape. I took over. The castle, the legacy, the fire, all of it. I am not a survivor. I am the storm that broke the bloodline. And from its ashes, I built my own throne.